So welcome to the SeCan Roundtable, What's New in Cereal Varieties for Western Canadian Farmers. We have Jim with us who is going to present, and then he's got moral support, Trent and Todd as well. So Jim is going to do a little bit of a presentation about new variety updates, and then all three of them will be open for any questions you may have. So you can put your questions in the chat, and then they will answer them at the end. So Jim, it's all yours.
Thanks, Caitlin. I thought we'd go through a fairly brief variety update. This is not all the varieties that SeCan has, but this will be just a select subset of varieties. Just to give a sort of a taste, because we can't go to the actual AIM site to look at varieties. So usually I start to talk, when we talk about varieties, we'll start with wheat and then talk about some barley varieties too. Our check variety in the field for most farmers is AAC Brandon. Brandon, this is just some crop insurance acres from Saskatchewan, this in 2019, showing the dominance of Brandon on a lot of acres. Those are the top 5 most widely grown in Saskatchewan. You can see Brandon right at the top, far and away the most widely grown, probably growing on between 40 and 50% of the acres on the prairies. Brandon here on the right is similar to Carberry in many different ways. Carberry was a very upright variety. Brandon has got a bit more of a floppy head, about the same height as Carberry with about a 5 to 6% yield advantage. They both had the MR rating, that's moderately resistant to fusarium head blight. So the combination of short, strong straw of Brandon, very good disease package with a good fusarium resistance and very good threshability has made Brandon very widely grown across the prairies with very exceptionally good yields, consistent yields, right from Manitoba up to the Peace River region. So this is the variety we're looking at to say, can we make small improvements on things that we see in Brandon? Can we get better yield or better sprouting tolerance? So that's just a picture of Brandon with Carberry to the left. This is just some information on Brandon. This was one of the parents was Superb with a bit of a North Dakota State University line in the background as one of the parents. This one, again, has the MR rating for fusarium head blight, and this is just a shot of making some swaths on my own farm by Elstow, Saskatchewan. You can see a very fluffy swath, so if you're swathing or straight cutting, a very nice variety for harvestability. Very good threshability. So in comparison to that, we've got a new variety that came out in spring of 2019. It was called AAC Tisdale. This one is a new CWRS variety, and it's an on-semi-dwarf. Anywhere from 100 to 109% of Carberry. So sort of in the zone of yield of Brandon. Also MR for fusarium head blight, which is a good rating. This one is about earlier maturity, about 2 days earlier than Carberry. It had also higher protein than Carberry. If you look in the Saskatchewan seed guide, it's anywhere from 1 to 2 days earlier with about a 0.5% better protein than Carberry. And it's fair for lodging and sprouting. So this is a midge-susceptible variety, but it gives you that earlier maturity, and it's really one of our first early varieties that has the MR rating for fusarium head blight. So again, it was named Tisdale because it fits well in that northern prairie zone where they want a little bit earlier maturity. Very large seed, similar to Glen in height, about 8 centimeters taller than Carberry. Just a picture here, you can see the height difference between the Tisdale and the Carberry. That 8 centimeters there. Not quite as strong straw as a Carberry. That again, is, about 8 centimeters taller than Brandon. Brandon and Carberry are very similar in height. Just going to move on to a couple other new hard red spring wheats that were just launched this past spring. AAC Alida VB. VB stands for varietal blend, and AAC Warman VB. So both of these varieties are midge tolerant wheats. So AAC Alida VB will likely, of these two, will be likely the biggest variety. This one sold out this spring. This is one to really pay attention to. Comes out of Ag Canada Swift Current. It's again an on semi-dwarf, 5 to 8% better yield than Carberry. And so we're seeing just a slight yield advantage potentially over Brandon and a little bit earlier than Carberry. So Alida is earlier than Carberry and Brandon, but it is about 6 to 7 centimeters taller than Carberry and Brandon. This one is one of our first midge tolerant wheats with the MR rating, the moderately resistant rating to fusarium head blight. So that's kind of a big step forward for a strong strawed midge tolerant wheat to have good fusarium resistance, and also has low DON accumulation. That's the vomitoxin, low accumulation of that. But the real claim to fame here is going to be this very good rating for lodging resistance and very good rating for sprouting resistance. One of the issues with Brandon was that it had a poor rating for sprouting resistance. So this variety will really be known for this good sprouting resistance, which often leads to good grade retention and just better grades overall in the fall. And often those type of varieties live a very long life because people love to get that #1 hard red spring wheat every year. And just a slight bit better protein than Carberry, and overall very good disease package, and just a little taller than the Carberry. So here's the registration data you can see coming through right around about 4 to 5% better than Carberry. That's very similar yield to Brandon. Height here is 6 centimeters taller, and this is the co-op registration trials, but similar straw strength. So this is a very exceptionally good straw strength and very high falling number, which translates to the very good rating for sprouting resistance. So that's going to be, I think, a fairly long-lived midge tolerant wheat because of that good sprouting rating and very good strong straw, even though it is slightly taller than Brandon. So just a picture of Alida here on the right. You can see the next picture, just that little bit increase in straw height. These pictures were taken south of Winnipeg back in 2017. Just some other pictures here near Saskatoon in 2017 with Alida on the right versus Brandon. And again, we can see just a little taller straw strength there, a little taller straw height. Just moving on to another new hard red spring for spring of 2020. This comes out of Ag Canada, Brandon, with Santosh Kumar as the breeder. This one has Olsen and Kane in the background. So Kane was a very popular wheat in Manitoba back about 10 or 15 years ago. This is, again, an Ond conventional height wheat. So this would be typical to some of the older varieties like AC Unity. Again, a midge tolerant wheat. The refuge is Tisdale that we spoke about before. And this one is about 11% higher yielding than Carberry, with 3 days earlier maturity than Carberry. But it is 13 centimeters taller than Carberry. So this would be a more of a typical conventional height. This also has MR rating for fusarium head blight. So this will be our first full height midge tolerant wheat with the MR rating for fusarium head blight and low DON accumulation. And but vastly improved in straw strength over something like AC Unity VB. Protein on this one was slightly lower than Carberry. So this is AC Warman here on the bottom, and you can see this nice yield bump. Part of that, it comes from the midge tolerance. We think height is, again, 10, 11 centimeters taller, so this is not a short variety, but it actually has reasonable straw strength and pretty good falling number. So that's AAC Warman VB. Just a shot of it there in Winnipeg, standing up well. Looks a lot like AC Unity. This is just a shot against Unity. Some of these people in Saskatchewan will have grown AC Unity VB. That was one of our first midge tolerant wheats. And there's Diphtheria to the left, and this is Unity versus Warman. So here you can see Unity and Warman look similar, but Warman would have better fusarium rating and stand up better. Just going to move on to two very new exciting varieties that will launch in spring of 2021. So you'll actually be able to buy seed of these varieties this fall. We'll start with AAC Starbuck VB, again a midge tolerant wheat, and then move to AAC Wheatland VB, another midge tolerant wheat. We are seeing that AAC Starbuck VB and Wheatland are both game-changing varieties. Starbuck's got yield that's out of this world. It's a huge step change in yield over the older varieties like Carberry and Brandon. Just a picture of Starbuck and Carberry side by side under irrigation at Swift Current, looking very similar to Carberry, about 3 centimeters taller. Again, this was bred by Richard Cuthbert at Ag Canada Swift Current, and on semi-dwarf. The refuge will be AAC Brandon, so 10% of what you're growing is still going to be Brandon. This had 13 to 17% higher yield than Carberry, which, if you take 6% off that, you're anywhere in that 7 to 11% higher yielding than Brandon. So this is a big yield jump for hard red spring wheat. A little bit earlier maturity than Carberry, and height just 3 centimeters taller. So that would be just slightly taller, slightly earlier maturing than Brandon. Again, this variety has the MR rating, the moderately resistant rating to Fusarium head blight with low dawn accumulation. So we've got a very good disease resistance package, slightly weaker straw than Carberry, but still very good straw strength and protein equal to Carberry with a high falling number. It gets a rating of good for lodging and fair for sprouting, which is still an improvement in sprouting over AAC Brandon. So this is just the registration data when it came through the co-op trials before it went into the provincial seed guide in Saskatchewan. Had that 14% better yield than Carberry. So that would be a full 9% better yield than Brandon coming through registration trials. Height, very similar in these trials to Carberry. We see a little bit taller usually in the field than Carberry, and pretty close to Carberry in straw strength. The lower the number, the better. So this 2.1 is just slightly weaker straw than Carberry at 1.8, and a pretty good high falling number over here. Grain protein very similar to Carberry. So that, we believe, will be one of those big yield jumps that will set a new yield plateau for hard red spring wheat in Western Canada. This is just a few pictures now of Starbuck, AAC Starbuck VB. This is Roundtable, retired wheat breeder from Swift Current, with Starbuck here on the left versus just another Czech variety in the trials. This is at the Kernan farm just outside Saskatoon back in 2017. You can see it's on average a little bit shorter than a lot of varieties around it. This is Starbuck on the right versus Carberry on the left under irrigation in 2018 at Swift Current. Again, just a touch taller than Carberry here, standing up beautifully there. And again in Lethbridge at under irrigation, Brandon on the right, Starbuck on the left, looking pretty close, pretty similar to each other there. Just another picture of Brandon. And another picture of Starbuck versus Wheatland. So I'm going to move on to talk a little bit now about AAC Wheatland VB. These two varieties look very similar in most respects. Again, another shot of Carberry versus Starbuck there. And this is now AAC Wheatland up in North Battleford. Back in 2018, a seed grower there, Charbon Seed Farm, they were achieving 80 bushels per acre with this variety. So it's performing like we thought it would with very high yield. Some Wheatland here again at the Kernan farm. Again, these varieties are often mid-thigh to up to my pocket. So about 85 to 88 centimeters tall. Again, Wheatland VB came out of Ag Canada Swift Current. Richard Cuthbert was the breeder. You can see it has Carberry as one of the parents in the background. This on semi-dwarf, about 12% higher yield than Carberry as it came through co-op trials, and slightly shorter in the co-op registration trials than Carberry. This variety, one of the big differences from Starbuck, it's a little shorter and a little stronger strawed than Starbuck, and it is intermediate rated for Fusarium head blight resistance. So it's not quite as good for Fusarium head blight resistance as Starbuck, but would have shorter and stronger straw. It's rated very good for lodging and good rating for sprouting. So this is for people who maybe don't have quite the Fusarium head blight pressure, but they want shorter, stronger straw than something like Starbuck. This is just a little data to compare the two side by side, and you can see here the just slightly lower yield than the Starbuck as it came through the co-op registration trials. Lodging was very similar to Carberry, a little better than Starbuck, and actually was a little bit shorter than Carberry coming through. So this is going to be one of our best yielding short, strong strawed, mid-tolerant wheats with a good rating for sprouting resistance. Just again, another picture of Wheatland under irrigation at Lethbridge. I'm going to move on and talk quickly about a couple fairly new Durum varieties. We can just see in Saskatchewan here in 2019, Transcend was by far the most popular, Strongfield still being widely grown, and then some varieties like Brigade have been growing, partly because of slightly better Fusarium head blight resistance. We've got a new variety called AAC Spitfire Durum. This one is, in theory, would be our AC Strongfield replacement with about 10% higher yield and a little bit shorter, stronger straw than the Strongfield. This one, this is a picture of Spitfire Durum down at Swift Current. I just to give an idea. And it's a hollow stem variety, about 10% better yielding than Strongfield, a little stronger straw than Strongfield, equal in maturity, and susceptible, they're rated as susceptible to fusarium head blight. Another new variety that came out in 2019, this is called AAC Stronghold Durum. The interesting part about AAC Stronghold Durum is this will be one of our shortest, strongest straw Durums. And it's also a solid stem Durum. This is just a picture again at the Kernan farm. This is Stronghold in this, this plot, and all the other Durum varieties around it are starting to lodge. And Roundtable is actually standing beside another upright plot of Stronghold here in the second replicate. So Stronghold is really going to be our best straw strength in Durum, with a very good lodging rating very good rating for lodging resistance. So this will be stronger straw than Strongfield and Cabri. In the seed guide, it shows about 5% better yield than Strongfield, but when our seed growers take it to the field, they just love it because they're getting really good straw strength, very easy harvestability, and very, very good yields. Especially if you're under any kind of irrigation or a little bit higher moisture in the dark brown soil zone, it's kind of a no-brainer to be looking at Stronghold for that improved straw strength. It's also a little bit better fusarium rating than something like, say, the new Spitfire. It's got the moderately susceptible rating, like most other Durums. Just want to mention a couple other varieties now fairly quickly. I'm just going to touch on a new winter wheat variety called AAC Wildfire. This is CDC Moats, one of our Czech varieties in our Sask seed guide. And this was developed by the Crop Development Center Saskatoon, Dr. Brian Fowler at CDC Moats. But AAC Wildfire, this one comes out of Agriculture Canada in Lethbridge. Rob Graff was the breeder. And this one is an exceptional variety, shorter, stronger straw than older varieties like Moats, with up to 15% better yield. It's also got kind of a bronze chaff, which means kind of a reddish colored head. This is a picture of white chaff here on the left. This is Wildfire with the bronze chaff. You can see the color difference in this picture. And that's at under irrigation at Lethbridge in 2015. So this is again another picture of Wildfire, quite a bit shorter than something like Radiant. Radiant also had the bronze chaff. So this is going to be more widely grown than Radiant and a little bit better yield than something called like Elevate. So that's AAC Wildfire, hard red winter wheat from Ag Canada Lethbridge. And the yield trials in Saskatchewan showing about 16% better yield than Buteo and about 9% better in the co-op trials than Moats. So it's also got in the moderately resistant rating to fusarium head blight. So this variety should take over a lot of the winter wheat acres because of its exceptional yield. I'm just going to move on to talk a little bit about barley. SeCan has two new malting barley varieties. One is called CDC Bow. This has been on the market for several years now. This would be the shortest and strongest straw in a two-row malt barley that we're aware of. It shows up very, very good, and especially in central Alberta or areas with high moisture, the Bow is tough to beat for straw strength. And it's coming in with improved yields over Metcalfe and Copeland, and people are really liking it. It's still in early stages of market development, and so it is an approved two-row malting barley, and some of it's being contracted now. But it's been on the market for several years. Another brand new one we have right now is CDC Fraser. CDC Fraser is here to the right, and this is Aaron Beattie, the new barley breeder at the Crop Development Center. Again, another shot here, Bow on the left with Fraser on the right. Fraser is, again, much improved in straw strength over Copeland and Metcalfe, with anywhere from 9 to 12% better yield. And so very good yield on the Fraser, a little bit higher yield than Bow. Bow is the strongest in straw. Fraser is not quite a strong straw, but it's got a little bit better yield than the Bow. And Fraser is just a little bit newer on the market. This is Synergy to the left. You can see it starting to lodge in a few spots in the back. This is at the Kernan farm in Saskatoon. Again, another shot of Bow standing up well versus lodging starting to happen in that Synergy. So Fraser, when it came through the co-op trial, registration trials, it was 14% better yield than Metcalfe. So this is yielding very similar to a feed barley, and it's intermediate to fusarium headlight, so it's got better fusarium rating than Bow, and a little bit later than Metcalfe and slightly shorter than Metcalfe, but very large kernels, plump kernels, and it should be a top yielding 2-row malting barley variety with stronger straw than Metcalfe, Copeland, and even Xena. Not quite as strong a straw as Bow. This one has very good malting quality, and it's got this high extract, low beta glucan, and high enzymes. What we've been hearing from some of the maltsters are that they think CDC Fraser could become a replacement for CDC Copeland, even though it's still in its early days of being grown on the prairies. So that's one to watch for the future. CDC Fraser, very good yields and potential replacement for CDC Copeland. And I'm just going to mention a couple oat varieties before I finish. Morgan oats have been widely grown in Saskatchewan because they're high yield and they stand up. They're very good straw strength. We've got 2 new oat varieties, ORE 3542M and 41M. Both of these shorter straw than say Morgan, but similar straw strength, very good lodging resistance, very plump kernels, very good milling quality. Probably maybe not the top yielder in the Saskatchewan seed guide, but growers that have grown them so far are really happy with their yields and their straw strength. So those are 2 new milling oats from SeCan 3542 and 3541. So that's just to make sure people know about those. This is 3541 growing in Portage la Prairie, Manitoba. Doing this one did about 192 bushels an acre and still stood up well. So that's if things stand up at Portage la Prairie, then they have pretty good straw strength. Again, this was a big crop growing up near in Alberta. And I'll just show some data here. 3542 seems to have slightly better yields, maybe a touch stronger straw, but they're sister lines and they're very, very similar to each other. And percent plump may be slightly higher on 3542. That's all I have for my presentation now. We'd be happy to talk about any questions.
Hey, Alex, it looks like it's just you. So if you have any specific questions of Jim, fire away.
So was there anyone else online?
Yes, so we had 28 people watching here. Nobody has typed a question yet into the chat. So I guess Todd, Trent, and Jim, what are some of your guys' most common questions that you guys get from farmers?
The most common question is, where can I buy seed? So if farmers have that question, listing in the back of the seed guide, that'll come out in January. You can also look at our website, just Google SeCan, S-E-C-A-N, or go to secan.com, and you can look up a list of seed growers there. So you can find the nearest seed grower or seed retailer that might have some seed of any of these varieties we've talked about. SeCan has a lot more varieties than what I covered, so you can call us anytime. Just look at our website or give us a phone call. Our contact information is on the website. You can feel free to chat with us to help you find the varieties that'll fit best for your farm. Trent, what's the common question?
For me, actually, probably the most common question would be, what's the best variety? And there's no such thing as a best variety because everybody's situation is different. And there's the best variety for that farm, but you really have to assess, what's the growing conditions like, where you're at, and then try to tailor a variety for that operation. Not just, well, this is the best, because everybody has great varieties. There's lots of them out there. The one you're growing might be the best for you for the situation you're in. So That's the most common one I get, for sure.
For me, it's just a bit of a twist on Trent's in a similar way. I'm growing variety X now. What do you have that will outperform that? And much like Trent, it's depends on the area, depends on the goals, depends on the challenges on that particular farm. And we're fortunate to have a broad portfolio that we can generally find something that works.
So I see Vicky has asked if there's any virtual beer. Oh.
Well, Jim doesn't drink, and Todd and I, well, we're not going to have virtual ones. We'll wait till after.
If there is an attendee that would like to ask a question, I could also unmute them if they don't want to type the question into the chat. Oh, there's a question from Vicky there. Does one of you guys want to read that?
So the question is, P&H has a program that allows a malt with a lower germ and more flexible quality. Do you think this will open up malt barley to a choice based on performance versus maltster's choice?
Jim, do you want to start?
The number of tons in the program. So yeah, that could be possibly, you could grow whatever variety would fit their specs. But how many tons does that program? You can often grow between 6 and 8 million tons on the prairies. So if they are doing a 20,000 ton program, it's not a huge portion of the barley acres. So I'm always happy to see those kind of programs, but I always wonder what percent of the actual barley will that cover?
So for me, it's much like Jim says, it's a bit of a supply and demand thing, and as long as there's lots of good quality malt out there, those will be always the first choice. But if there are markets that will take some lower quality, and it's great to see some of those off-spec, in many cases, products have an opportunity to move into a malt situation, which provides a little better value to growers.
So there's a follow-up on there. And what does China buy for malt?
Well, my information's old. We used to select 2 million tons. We'd use 1 million domestically and export 1 million to various export customers. So China's demand for malt barley is potentially humongous, like many millions of tons. The question is, can we access that market with our varieties? Will they buy from us? I mean, Australia is a lot closer. Australia's a lot closer, and if they don't have drought, they have pretty good quality. So.
They do like Copeland and Metcalfe and have for decades. And so those are both completely accepted, and we're working with Chinese brewers and maltsters to get the new products accepted as well. So they've seen Bow, they've seen a little bit of Fraser now, and those are important steps to develop the market, both here in North America at the same time as we do overseas to get that universal acceptance. So working on the new ones.
What newest variety are you guys most excited for, and why? And how do you think that will benefit farmers?
Todd, I'm gonna let you take that one.
So I'm most excited about AAC Starbuck VB, the combination of short strong straw, MR diffusarium, low dawn, and then the midge tolerance. In the eastern prairies, fusarium has been such a big issue for such a long time, overriding many other factors. And so now that you can have that onboard protection of midge tolerance, it's with the short strong straw and the MR, it's really a very complete package. So when we launched the first midge tolerant varieties back in 2010, they said, well, can we have one of those like Carberry? And it took us a while to get it. Well, Carberry wasn't around quite then, but it took us a while to catch up and get that. And that's what Wheatland and Starbuck are.
And for me, I'm going to pick its sister. I'm going with AAC Wheatland VB, because for me in Alberta, straw strength is king. The I versus the MR, it's close enough, I think, in most instances. I want straight cut as much as possible, and that's where Wheatland I think will shine for the Alberta market. And then the midge tolerance, we saw a huge outbreak in the piece. I think this year we're probably going to have some kind of all over because conditions are right. So that just the added benefit of a VB, that's a short, strong straw for Alberta. I think it's great.
Jim, do you have one that you're most excited about and you're looking forward to?
Well, I like CDC Fraser, two-row malt barley, partly because if we can get that established and begin to replace Copeland, it could live for 20 years. So if these two-row malts take a long time to become accepted and established, but if they ever get there as far as market acceptance, they can live a long time. So that can be exciting for farmers, because many farmers have told me their best dollars are from two-row malt barley that gets selected for malt.
Yeah, so if any farmers have questions, please type them in the chat, or even just type in the chat that you have a question and I can unmute you. So looking down the road, 5, 10, 25 years, whatever, however far you want to look, what do you guys think we're going to see for new varieties? Or what do you want to see for new varieties?
Well, I was kind of hinting at it that we see small changes over a Czech variety like Carberry or Brandon, whichever one you want to pick as your Czech, because we don't often see large step changes that are huge, because it's all trying to pick up small disease increments in disease resistance and yield or sprouting tolerance. So we hope that we can continue to increase yield by about 1/2 to 3/4 of 1% per year. That's kind of been the typical yield increase in new varieties. And so if we can carry that on, that's good. And I'm hoping for, especially in durum, some better fusarium resistance in durum. That'll be a huge game changer for a lot of the prairies if we can improve disease tolerance in durum.
So I see there's a question from Vicky. Is SeCan going to have a faba bean in the list soon?
So we do have a faba bean, but in Saskatchewan, it was released under Saskatchewan Pulse Growers. So we market the bean in Alberta and Manitoba. So unfortunately, that won't really change things for Vicky, but we keep our eyes open. And so we just don't have anything specific to add at this point in time.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you guys want to talk about this at all, but it came up in another roundtable about regulations and policies of getting new varieties approved in Canada and stuff. Is that anything you guys want to talk about, like the changes of those regulations and how that has affected SeCan?
I'll start with it, and then Jim and Trent can chime in. So we have our variety registration system in Canada, and it kind of does some double duties. And I'll speak specifically about malt barley, CWRS wheat, and oats for that matter. So they provide a minimum hurdle for, minimum. It's a pretty strict system to get through. For spring wheat, CWRS wheat, it takes 3 years across many locations and compared to some pretty good checks when you're comparing to varieties like Carberry. And so you are looking for minimum disease standards, you're looking for minimum quality requirements. And so that does a couple of things. It protects the overall market from having a variety that has inferior disease, but it also ensures that the quality is going to be it can be classified within its proper class prior to increasing a whole bunch of seed. Because a seed grower or a farmer wouldn't want to latch onto a variety and start growing thousands of acres or tens of thousands or millions of acres when they don't know which class that's going to fit in. And so our variety registration system helps provide that guidance and understanding of what that variety is all about. There are other markets around the world that do it backwards, where you'd have a variety in production and then classify it later, which is I don't think it's efficient for the seed industry, and I don't think it's efficient for farmers either. So Jim, Trent, anything to add to that?
No, I think you nailed it on the head. The last thing we want to do is grow something that nobody else wants or doesn't know where it's going.
So there are certainly improvements that we can make to the system to encourage new entrants and healthy competition, but at the same time, it really does provide a backdrop for good products to make it to the market. And even with that, sometimes they get through, and we find things when they enter production that aren't, as you start to grow them in a commercial field, they don't quite perform the same way because you're dealing with small plots versus commercial reality, and that just takes time to ramp them up to that size.
Good point.
So there was one question about seed value creation. That just wondering if anybody wanted to hear about that one. It's something that's been close to me for a very long time, and something that I've worked on now for 12 years, and making good progress in terms of moving things forward. And this is about, as Jim described, making those incremental gains and then occasionally making that step change. And so without proper investment in ensuring that the breeding programs are adequately resourced, we risk either falling behind because of a disease outbreak or a shift in a disease population, weather patterns, or just losing overall competitiveness because we don't have the best genetics available. And so we're looking at systems and approaches that will ensure that those breeding programs are adequately resourced, fix the holes that are there now, and build for the future.
Great. I don't see any more questions, but is there any last words, Trent, Todd, or Jim, that you guys want to share with the farmers that are attending tonight?
I would just say thanks for joining us at supper time. And if you have any other questions, just feel free to give us a call. We're happy to talk to you. We enjoy talking to farmers and trying to find the best varieties to grow on wherever they farm.
And please send my rain to Jim, because I don't need no more.
And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone tonight. It's not quite the same as being in the field at Langham, but we'll make the best of an awkward situation, and appreciate everybody's attention today. Thanks.
Yeah, and I want to encourage all of our participants tonight to check out your guys' crop plot tour that you guys are hosting every single day of Ag in Motion Discovery Plus. You guys can find that in the schedule as well. They have an exhibitor booth, so make sure you check out SeCan in the exhibitor showcase. And I'm pretty sure you can probably hunt down Jim, Todd, and Trent there. So with that, I'm going to let everybody get back to supper. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Take care, everybody.
Good night.